In the summer of 1982, I attended a small gathering. There were 4 boys I remember specifically being at the house. Brett Kavanaugh, Mark Judge, a boy named PJ. People were drinking beer. Brett and Mark were visibly drunk. I went up a very narrow set of stairs leading from the living room to a second floor to use the restroom. When I got to the top of the stairs, I was pushed from behind into a bedroom across from the bathroom. I couldn't see who pushed me. Brett and Mark came into the bedroom and locked the door behind them. I was pushed onto the bed, and Brett got on top of me. He began running his hands over my body and grinding into me. I yelled, hoping that someone downstairs might hear me.
He pressed me to justify my reasons for saying no to him. These incidents took place in his office or mine. They were in the form of private conversations which would not have been overheard by anyone else. My working relationship became even more strained when Judge Thomas began to use work situations to discuss sex. On these occasions, he would call me into his office for reports on education issues and projects, or he might suggest that because of the time pressures of his schedule, we go to lunch to a government cafeteria. After a brief discussion of work, he would turn the conversation to a discussion of sexual matters. His conversations were very vivid. He spoke about acts that he had seen in pornographic films involving such matters as women having sex with animals and films showing group sex. He talked about pornographic materials depicting individuals with large penises or large breasts involved in various sex acts. On several occasions, Thomas told me graphically of his own sexual prowess. Because I was extremely uncomfortable talking about sex with him at all, and particularly in such a graphic way,
at Brandeis University and author of Believing, Our 30-Year Journey to End Gender Violence. Professor Hill, thank you very much for coming to the Sunday Show.
It's a pleasure to be able to talk with you. Excited to hear what you want to talk about, too.
Yes. Well, we want to talk about your
I mean, there's so
book.
much going on. I just say there's so much going on in the world that I'm glad we're able to talk about this issue because it is so important. I mean, it's sexual harassment, but it's so much more that is going on in the lives of women and others as well who are experiencing gender-based violence.
In fact, you say, quote, pledging to get rid of a few bad apples are all forms of denial, none of which have effective solutions. How do we move towards solutions when the root of the problem is often ignored or misunderstood?
Well, first of all, we ignore the root of it. We ignore the significance of it and the breadth of it and the harm that it's causing to us as a society.
You don't feel like a victim?
I was not thrown on the ground and ravished, which the word carries so many sexual connotations. This was not sexual. It hurt. You know.
But I think most people, it is a violent assault. It is not.
This is how demented this woman really is. In this article that I found, she goes into details about different encounters, including Mr. Trump himself and other men she has interacted with. There's one particular story about a mob boss who did something to her. Well, first of all, what the hell are you doing going to a mob boss, let alone dealing with organized crime? That's a red flag in itself. I'm going to tell you what this picture depicts. It depicts this woman as a misogynist. If you know what a misogynist is, you understand how much hatred she has for men. I'm not making this up. treating men like they're immature people. They can't decide whether or not they can throw an intercontinental ballistic missile at each other, let alone make normal decisions in life. This is pretty sad. It makes you question if this woman is just making things up. Guy looks at her wrong, and she immediately accuses him of the dreaded R word. I'm not going to say it on here because YouTube likes to censor videos using that word. Here's another piece of evidence that depicts that she is a feminist, she is a misogynist, and worst of all, did I mention she may be a predator herself? She admitted to sexually harassing Roger Ailes. When a victim brags about things like this, that raises some very suspicious red flags. So reading that article about E. Jean Carroll, she's insisting that more than a dozen men use the R word with her. The mechanic, a mob boss, this guy, that guy. I'm going to tell you something about her. She's a feminist. She's a misogynist. You know what a misogynist is, and you understand what I'm talking about. She has a total hatred and discriminatory bias towards men. She feels we are immature. She feels we are not capable of making culpable decisions. So the big $64,000 question is, why is she really accusing Donald Trump of what he did? She's been a misogynist, and she posted about it on Elle magazine. No wonder they got rid of her. They got rid of her woke behavior. The point is, this is sad commentary on how pathetic go. I showed you the pattern of behaviors they're doing. It has nothing to do with accusing them of the crime. It has everything to do with stopping them from getting into power, or in the case of what Miss Carroll is doing right now, she has no job, so she's doing it for money. You know what they say about that.
Stop it. Get some help.
And let me make it clear on a disclaimer. I'm not saying, you know what, screw it. I am saying, we're seeing this pattern of behavior before. When are these feminists who are misogynistic? Oh, did I mention she's a predator as well? Apparently, there's an article come out that Roger Ailes was sexually harassed by her. So, her accusing Mr. Trump of what he did, but yet she's okay with sexually harassing other men. Something ain't right here, folks, and I got one thing to say about that.
Hell no. Come on, wait. To the no, no, no.